you so much for joining us today for our episode. We're so excited to have you join us. And we once I came across your story, I just thought it was super interesting, and I think a lot of people would really relate to it, connect to it, and they would really be interested in learning about the whole process behind immigrating over to Canada. But first things first, if you don't mind, telling our listeners kind of who you are, how old you are, where you based, and when you moved to Canada.
So yes, hi guys, my name is Rachel. I am 26 years old. I'm originally from Manila, Philippines, and in 2017, I made the big jump and packed all my bags and went to Canada for pursuing higher education. And like 3 years later after, I'm here and waiting for my PR status here in Canada.
Awesome. So when did you arrive in Canada? Was it like what season? Was it summer? Was it winter?
Oh, it was fall. Yeah, it was fall. It was a bit of a shock to me because it was like I come from a tropical country.
Yeah.
I don't know the cold. Like the coldest for me there was like 20 degrees probably. And then moving to Canada to Vancouver, yeah, the cold struck me, and I didn't even know the concept of layering properly.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of like, oh no, now I have to like cover up and bundle up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, take us through the whole journey, the whole story behind kind of leading up to immigrating to Canada. So, first things first, I had to commend you. Like, what an incredible journey to take, to be so brave, to be so adventurous, to be so determined, to come here solo from Manila, fresh off, the Philippines, and settle here in Vancouver. That must have been such a huge life change, and definitely kind of one of those, once in a lifetime type of experience. So yeah, let's, share with our listeners a little bit of the beginning of the story. And when did you start to get the idea of moving to Canada, or kind of started thinking about immigrating or going abroad for school, for a new life?
Okay, so yeah, when did the idea of moving to Canada come to me? So I say that I was towards the tail end of my university days. It struck me that my student life will soon be over, and I still had doubts on what I really wanted to do after graduation. I kind of had like that that quarter life crisis, I guess, of like what the next chapter of my life would be like. And, having spent most of my life in Manila, I was craving for something new or craving for change. And I guess like I also looked at my dad and what he's accomplished to give the best for our family. He went abroad and he spent most of his life providing for us from afar. And I guess I got the idea from my mom too, where she would always say that we have a good life because my dad pursued work abroad. And in a way, I wanted to follow in his footsteps, but without any drastic adjustments to my life. And so, taking all of that into consideration, Canada had everything that I was looking for. So, the language wasn't a problem because I was well versed in English. It was also a practical choice, considering that I had relatives there that can offer their support when I get to Canada. And more importantly, like the quality of life was great. Like I felt safe. I feel like, I mean, just imagining it, I guess. I guess back then, I feel safe living in a beautiful country where people are welcoming of others, especially those with different cultural backgrounds. And so that kind of like jump started or motivated me to like start my study permit application.
So before you actually got here and you went through the whole process, had you come to visit Canada before? Like, had you come to, not just Vancouver, just Canada in general? Have you come for vacation or?
No, like
Wow.
yeah, I know. Like it was like a big jump because like North America seemed so distant to me then. Like I think my I visited the US probably like 10 years before like deciding the study permit application. And I kind of just thought that they were kind of the same. Like that kind of lifestyle, like the North American lifestyle would be the same. So I was pretty excited. And I guess from movies and like what I watched, like, okay, maybe this is the type of vibe that I would get if I were to go to Canada. And so it was different, and different to me was good enough. So yeah, that's what I had no idea of what Canada would be like. Only through pictures and like I guess my relatives would send photos of their life in Canada to the Philippines, and then I can't kind of get an idea like, oh, there's snow, oh look, there's red leaves in the background, and like it just like I was thrilled, or like, oh my God, there's a squirrel, you know, like that kind of already excited me.
Would you say that you had like a type of wanderlust, or you were kind of just admiring like the whole environment and the ambiance of what it would be like in Canada, and that's kind of what really got you excited?
Yeah, there was a bit of wanderlust, but I don't know, like when you asked me that question, I would actually remember the time that I was waiting to submit my application to the visa center. And you know that they have those like TVs where they kind of like like a montage of all the nice places per province, and then it showed BC, and then it showed photos of Vancouver, and then I'm like, oh man, is that even like, can I even get there? To me it seemed like a dream, but like a dream, like I really wanted to go.
Wow.
I want to be there.
So so with that said, that like first there's the vision, right? And then it becomes the dream. So now tell us about the work.
The work,
So,
I know.
Take us through like going through the paperwork, like the qualifications. Like I'm sure you're doing this while you were still in school, right? So, if you could go back, I'm kind of testing your memory a little bit, but if you could go back in kind of the organizational way that you went about going through the process of pursuing this dream, can you share more about that?
Okay, so yeah, I felt like when I started it, of course, like with the excitement came in the worries and doubts. I'm like, oh man, I'm just, I haven't even finished university when I actually planned on beginning this whole application. So that alone was my first concern. Like, oh man, I had to graduate first, and I had to pass all of my subjects, and engineering was very difficult. And I thought like, oh, will I have to do it in order for me to, jump ship. And I guess that's also most of other people's concerns. Like, do they question if their qualifications are enough, or if it's too much, or like if they're it's like oh, I may be too young or too old to really create an application. But I don't know. Like I thought that at that time I didn't have much to lose. I was about to graduate university, begin the unemployment life, and so I'm like, oh, might as well, like if anything bad were to happen, at least like there's still a starting point where I can pick myself up and try again. But to begin, I guess there was a lot to do, and that was like the hardest part, like the researching part. That took, I guess, like 50% of my time of throughout the whole process. Like 50% was dedicated to research. Like, and from my research, I guess the first step that really jump-started my application was taking the IELTS exam. So,
and can you describe what the IELTS exam is for listeners who are not familiar?
So IELTS exam is basically an English proficiency exam. So there are two parts to that exam. There's the written, and the written part of the exam, and the interview. So basically, I had to prove my proficiency in English in the 4 categories, which is listening, reading, writing, and speaking. It was fairly challenging because at that time, there were about like 300 test takers in one hotel. Like, yeah, it was massive. There was like a big venue and all just rows and columns of chairs and tables lined up for, because this is like for those wanting to immigrate to New Zealand, Australia, Canada, right? So they all converged in that one venue. But yeah, I went through that. There's like it I think it lasted for like the exams took place in 2 days. So the first one was like the interview. Oh, sorry, the first one was a written exam. Yeah, so I had to do the listening, the reading, and the writing portion. And then the week after, that's when the interview happened. And yeah, it was quite challenging. I didn't
Did you practice like the interview, or like were there any practice questions? Like what's the interview process like?
The interview process was it's more of like an introduction, right? So you casually go in the room, and then they ask you like, what's your name, where are you from, and a bit of your like they'll give you time to explain your background. So I kind of like what we did in at the start of this podcast, like, I'm Rachel, 26, or Philippines, yeah. And then Miss Universe. But at the end, like the tone just like went all serious, and then it was an academic test, right? So for people wanting to study in Canada, they should know that there are two types of IELTS exams. The first one is an academic, and the second one is like a general test. So academic is for like study permit application if you're wanting to study in Canada, and the general test is more for immigration. Okay. So
and which one was the one that you did?
The one that I did was academic test at the time.
Okay.
So yeah, I remember her asking me that question still, because I was like shocked at the question. She asked me like the correlation between climate change and advancement in technology. She wanted.
It's so deep.
I know. I was like, oh wow, I thought that this would be like describe your ideal your ideal vacation or something along those lines. But it was very yeah, I was quite surprised. It took me, I was like, could you repeat the question?
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
like, yeah. So it was a nerve-wracking experience. But you know, like there are a lot of like online like practice materials online.
Okay.
And had I known then, I think I would have done better. But I'm also thankful that I did learn organically, because our schools also teaches in English. We present in English. And so it wasn't really that difficult for me to do the test. It was challenging, but not too challenging.
Yeah. So after the IELTS exam, like, you know, once that was out of the way, kind of what was the next step you had to take?
So I guess the next step was applying to my chosen school and program. So yeah, because most of the schools or the programs that I would look at prior to getting my IELTS required an IELTS exam. So I thought like, okay, well, the first thing that I have to hit is the IELTS exam. And then next was more like narrowing down to my to the program that I preferred and the school that I wanted to choose, which led me to apply at BCIT or BCIT.
Because I am a fellow BCIT alum.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's a really great school. So yeah, it's British Columbia Institute of Technology, the Burnaby campus. And I took their Communication Design Essentials program. So yeah, it's weird because the program I chose was far from what I finished for undergrad. Like I took up a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering, but I ended up, jumping ship to communication design. But
not only is she very intelligent and beautiful fellas. She's very creative.
Yes, take notes. Write it down. But yeah, I've always had an interest for graphic design, and I thought that learning it abroad would be a great experience. I mean, I tried to look for this type of program in the Philippines, but it was mostly like, it's always like a 4-year program, and I kind of wanted to expedite the process of learning at least the surface level concept of graphic design, and BCIT had that program offered at their school.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there were 3 important documents that I had to give for admission to the program. And take note to it varies depending on the school and depending on the program, but this was what was asked from me. So one was my official transcript. The second one was my IELTS exam. And the third one was a design portfolio. So that was something I kind of struggled with, because I was like, design portfolio, but I finished engineering. I don't have like any kind of like portfolio. Yeah, I don't have that kind. So I just like stitched together some of the photos I would take from my travels, and like made it like into a themed book, and then sent that to them. BCIT got back to me after a couple weeks for the interview. And I had an interview with the program head. And then basically he asked me my motivations in taking the program. And so I just explained accordingly, like after which, that's when I was officially accepted into the program. I got my letter of acceptance, and this was all within a month. Like, I applied to the school, I got the interview at the same month, and I got accepted at the end of the month. So it all happened really fast.
Yeah. Wow. So from when you started your documents up until the letter of acceptance, so that whole I guess the time that progressed was a month?
Yes.
Wow.
That was a month.
That happened so fast.
That happened so fast.
That surprised you?
That surprised me, because actually when I started my YouTube channel, I was retracing my steps, and I wanted to like give a guide to viewers on like the timeline, right? And then I was looking at all the dates of when I uploaded my documents to the BCIT student portal, to the time that I received an email for my scheduled interview with the program head, to the date that I got the letter of acceptance. They were all like May 2017. And I'm like, wow, like that happened all within a month. Like, it also surprised me, because it felt like time elapsed. Like, it felt like months when I'm preparing for it.
What happened after the letter of acceptance? So now that really made it real, did you have this conversation with your parents? Like, what? And then afterwards, how did it jumpstart kind of the next process, to officially put in the documents to apply to move to Canada?
Yeah, it was so interesting, because we were at a family vacation in Vietnam, and I was like in a boat, like trying to creep on someone's Wi-Fi, and then I got the letter of acceptance. I was telling my parents, like, oh my God, I got in. And they're like, no, like, really? Did you actually? And I'm like, yeah, I think so, because I got like a conditional letter of acceptance. Like, I think I got, and then because my parents were very supportive of me, but they wanted me to work on it on my own, as to kind of show dedication, because it was also like for them to test if I can make it to that obstacle of going through it alone. I guess that's also like a taste of what to expect my life would be in Canada, because most of it I will be doing alone. But after the whole letter of acceptance, the next thing was making sure that all my documents were lined up, everything was valid, everything was up to date. Right when we got back from our family vacation, I renewed my passport, and then I also um, updated my driver's license because it was about to expire too, and then I made sure I had like copies of all my IDs with me, and also bring like original copies with me, like for example my driver's license, my passport of course, and my birth certificate. um, I even got like an LTO certification, which is kind of like a red seal, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or a red ribbon,
Wow.
authenticating that I have like driving experience in the Philippines. And I got it because someone just told me to get it, but I didn't know that when you have that, you can actually skip steps in the driving lessons here in Canada, because there's like a learner's phase, then I think novice, and then class 5.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I was able to skip the from L. I can jump right to class 5 with that.
Nice.
So I had that in order. Aside from that, I got my recent bank statements from the last 6 months. You know, all my bank certificates. Um, I My mom and I went to the flight center to book a flight to Vancouver in advance, just because it was quite a gamble too. Because I was telling her like, what if my study permit isn't approved, man? Like that's gonna. She's like, it's okay. Like we can just use the credit,
Rebook.
yeah, for something
Yeah.
else. And I'm like, okay, you're right, but I do hope that it gets approved. So we booked it in advance. I also applied for a police certificate. So just to prepare, like usually IRCC or Immigrations Canada asks for this document um, after submitting your study permit application. That like it's like a follow up document, but I didn't want to wait until they asked for it. I wanted to have it prepared already. So I booked an appointment with the NBI clearance in advance to get
Yeah.
my police certificate. And like, I guess for the listeners out there, a police certificate is just to prove that you do not have any criminal record, so that you don't pose as a risk to Canada. So yeah, that there's that. Yeah, and then once I had all of this and filled out all the application forms, I think the application forms are um, like I filled out like 2 3 application forms. They're pretty simple, but you have to be very meticulous and transparent when answering the form, because any mistake can cause a misrepresentation, and that in turn can actually uh, prevent or like affect your immigration applications, your future immigration applications with IRCC. Because like if you lie about your application, or if you withheld relevant information about yourself, you can be banned from Canada for 5 years, or your
Wow.
application will simply be refused.
Mhm.
And yeah, like it's a red flag. It's basically flagged on your immigration history. So
Oh, wow.
like you really have to get it right from the start. And yeah, that was a major pressure that I had to face, since I did all of it myself.
Mhm.
So yeah, and at the end
Oh,
of that, like Immigrations Canada got back to me and they requested like a medical exam. um, I had that done. That's kind of like a positive sign that it's on its way. That's what
yeah.
I read from the forums, I guess. And yeah, in September 2017, received a study permit application approval. So yeah, from May to September. Like,
Amazing. Oh my goodness. That must have been like such an exciting like moment. Like from, like I bet it was still so nerve wracking, but having to like still keep on pushing like from one process to the other, one application after the other, and just being as thorough as you can. And then once you got that work permit, it's like, wow, like this is it.
yeah, I know. It's like I was so nervous too, because like I got the study permit, my passport with the student visa, like a week before my flight. So I was like panicking. I'm like, is it
Oh my God.
like, will it ever arrive? Like, I need to pack my bags and go, or like it was a very like nerve-wracking moment. I was so antsy the whole time because like yeah. And then I don't know, like I like when I received the news that it got approved, and it's like in really small letters that it will say like your application has been approved. It's like all that small font just to tell you like all that you've been through, just to see the you've been approved. Like, huh? Like I went through all of that mess. I went through all of that traffic and like waiting for that small font that tells me I was approved. So I was like, holy, it dawned on me like, wow, so much. I did so much for this. But I'm happy. Like something like that I was so grateful because
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, obviously you were incredible in just staying organized and getting everything put together and prepared. And up
Mhm.
until that very moment that, passport's ready, all the papers are ready, everything is approved. Were there any setbacks or challenges you experienced kind of, going through that whole process?
Oh, it's like as you were asking me that question, it's like, oh, all the flashback of it's like, yeah, I guess like I did. Of course, there will be challenges, especially if you're undertaking such a huge responsibility of studying in another country. There were problems or challenges in my exams and like the finances, the waiting times, and of course, like the mental health. And I'll expound on it on each one. For the exams, like again, like I was still finishing my undergrad. So there was a lot of pressure to complete my requirements so that I can graduate and then study again in
Yeah.
another country. The IELTS exam too, I guess, was also pretty challenging since, yeah, the whole experience of being surrounded by 300 test takers. I'm not saying that they were like my competition, but like you can tell that everyone
It's
else.
overwhelming, like the
Yeah.
feeling of so many people.
Exactly, because like again, like it's not like a competition at all, but it felt like there was like uh, like you're comparing yourself in a way. Like I tried to avoid that, but in a way, I felt that I was like, oh man, everyone wants to get to immigrate to this country. So what
Yeah.
makes me worthy, right? To
Mhm.
to be here. So that was like one of the things that I found challenging. In a way, I felt competitive to outdo myself. That's what I was trying to say. In terms of finances, money was also a concern.
Mhm.
All these costs added up. Like study permit application was 150 Canadian dollars. The medical exam was 250 Canadian dollars, and then and then out of nowhere, like all my tuition fees as an international student in Canada was at like 14,000 Canadian
Wow.
dollars. Like that 14,000, that 1 year program in
Mhm.
Canada was like my 5 year program in the Philippines. So
Wow.
that it's like my parents paid twice for me to take like 10 years to
Mhm.
do for undergrad program. So of course
Mhm.
it's also not as simple as packing my bags and just going to Canada, right? Like there was a lot of planning and there was a
Mhm.
lot of calculation involved, and we had to like reach out to our relatives here, of course, to help shoulder some of the costs when I arrived, just because, and they were more than willing to help. And they were more like they were very supportive, especially when they heard that I got my visa approved. And yeah, like they were like, oh yeah, if you live in Vancouver, it's hard to find rent, or rent is like really expensive because you're living in one of the most expensive countries in all of Canada. So
Mhm.
they saved me that cost. Even the food that they have, like of course, like beggars can't choose. Like and I'm pretty like I can eat anything, And so just that help alone saved me a lot on my grocery bills. And I only had to worry about the little expenses there, like getting my phone bill, my transportation expense of commuting in Canada. So very small compared um, to like starting
What others
from
may
scratch.
experience. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I needed all the support that I could get, and yeah, I'm very grateful that I had my family in the Philippines and my family in Canada to support me in all my endeavors. Waiting times were also a pain. Like requesting, especially documents in the Philippines, like it took so long.
Filipino time.
I know, I would wait for hours just for a piece of paper. I waited 6 hours for this, like for a paper that like just tells me that I am who I am. So it's like, okay. And then I would drive to all these places and I'm waiting in traffic as well. Like the traffic in the Philippines is like otherworldly. Like it really tested my patience. And like I'm in the car and I'm like driving or waiting in traffic and I'm like, this is fine. Like this is all, yeah, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get to Canada. Don't worry. Just a couple more hours in traffic. Gas is running low. Like aircon is not too it's getting weak because it's competing with the warmth outside. And I'm like, yeah, this is fine. It's okay. This is just short-term hardship for long-term, for the long-term benefit that I'll get hopefully when I arrive in Canada. So
yeah. And then take us through the mental like preparation. Like obviously that whole thing, you were kind of like in process mode, in administrative mode, getting all of that done. And now that it's official, like take us through the whole mental preparation you took, leading up to when you were about to fly home.
Yeah.
Fly to Canada, sorry.
Well, it's home, hopefully now, yeah. But in terms of mental health, I guess there were a lot of times when I didn't want to continue because of my fear of putting so much effort into something only to face rejection. Like that was my anxiety speaking. That was my anxiety taking over. I thought that I couldn't bear a refusal after all that I went through. And sometimes like my head would play scenarios where I'd fail. And another mental health that toggled with my mental health was knowing that I would leave the Philippines. And that entails being away from my family and friends for a very, very long time. I tried to repress my feelings of missing them too much. Like I was excited, like, oh my God, I'm going, like, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I haven't been this far from my mom or my siblings for such a long time. And I just can't imagine what it would be like, especially like moving in with another family who have different mannerisms and, like things will change up. And I had to mentally prepare myself for that. So, even at the airport, like when my mom and dad were bidding me goodbye, like there was a part of me that I was just excited to get on the plane alone and like, okay, it's a solo trip to Canada, like this is my first time doing all of that, like traveling alone, traveling to North America or going to Canada and like studying there. So I was more excited for that. But then right when they said goodbye, that kind of like, that's when the feelings sunk in. I'm like, oh man, like all of like, I always spend all my holidays, all of the special occasions with them. So I was so worried, like what it would look like in Canada. And then just the feeling of like, the comfort that I felt being at home. It's like, I know it's going to be different. So yeah, I miss having siblings to annoy, right? Like just barge in their room, grab their charger and like, see you. But, or like driving my mom to wherever she wants to go in the Philippines. Like that was something that I was accustomed to, and I miss them. Like I miss them a lot. So yeah, long story short, I guess going through the process definitely affects you in a whole other way. Like there was excitement, but on the other hand, I was also anxious and worried. And
Mm-hmm.
and this is something that I always tell everyone else that are planning to make this move in their life. You know, they go hand in hand. Like I think the first week I was crying because it's like, oh man, this is not my element. Like I don't belong here. I feel like I feel so alone, and like, and then on one hand, the next day it would be like, oh my god, there's a squirrel, or like I'm outside and it's snowing, and I haven't experienced this feeling before. So it switches up, and it's a normal process that anyone would have to go through, especially if they're making a big decision like moving to another country.
Mm-hmm. And with that said, like once you got here, like what was different from what you expected? Like when you got here, that totally like shocked you. Other than like, oh, you came, it's fall, it's autumn season, it's so cold. Like, what was different from what you expected? When you first came.
Well, I guess like, okay, aside from the weather, I think the next one would be transit. Like,
Yeah.
So I drove back in the Philippines, so I had that convenience. And so when I found out that I had to take transit here, there was a bit of like, I don't know how to do this, or would it be okay? Will I be safe here, or how would it look like? So, yeah, back home, and I'm saying this because back home it's usually a pain to commute, and sometimes and even drive there. Like the traffic's insane. And whether it's waiting in line with other people to go on board or waiting for the car to move in traffic, there was always and this is in the Philippines, like a delay or an inconvenience to simply get from point A to point B. And then I kind of brought that thinking to Vancouver, and like I was like had all my guard up, I have to be alert, and conscious all the time. And I did, like when I went here, I was like, holy, it's like so different. I didn't feel any of that. Like it was convenient. Most of the trains and buses arrive on time. People are respectful of each other's space. Like I was telling this to my friend the other day. Like I think when I got into the train and then someone pulled out their phone or was wearing headphones while listening to music, I was like, holy, it's pretty ballsy of you to do that in the train. And then I noticed everyone else doing it. So I'm like, oh, I'm the weird one. Like I'm the one that I was so worried about, like, because my mom would tell me, like, keep your phone in your bag at all times. Don't ever bring it out when you're outside commuting. Someone's gonna take that from you. But that wasn't the case at all in Vancouver. We gave way to those that needed the seat more than we did. People had their own kind of bubble where people respect each other's space. Like even like for example, like around this time, like Halloween, I would see people like dressed up like to the nines, or to going to a Halloween party or something on the bus or on the train, and they're wearing this funky costume or gear, and like it's normal. Like it's people don't don't stare at you or look at you differently for expressing yourself. So that's something that I noticed when I was commuting here in Vancouver.
Would you say, like, if you were to compare commuting as a woman in the Philippines, in Manila, versus commuting as a woman here, can you share about kind of what that experience is? Like, do you feel like you were safer commuting in and around here in Vancouver?
I was like, because I was safer in Vancouver as compared to the Philippines in terms of like, for example, in the Philippines, I don't know, it's just I guess most parents worry about it, that their daughter, especially if like you're a girl, I guess, like, oh, don't dress up too nice, or don't look lost when you're commuting outside, because that gives signals to predators out there to take advantage of the situation. Like that was always something that was told that I was told to do before commuting. And sometimes and sometimes that would be the last resort. Like they would never let me commute. They would rather drop me off, or I drive, or if not, take a cab back home. Like not commute. Like that was the common notion back in the Philippines. But in Vancouver, like for example, if I wanted to wear a fashion statement, or I just felt like, I wanted to dress a certain way, I can. And I'm pretty much free to do that, because there's very little people that would judge, or make comments, or
We're
make
paying
comments about
attention,
it.
really.
It's just like you do you here. It's like,
Yeah,
it's your space. You feel free to express yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, which brings me, I guess, to the next point, which is like the people. People here are very polite. You say thank you every time. That's what I noticed. Like every time they get off the bus, they say thank you. And then if they apologize to you, if they accidentally bumped you in transit, and when I was lost, there was actually a time where I felt lost, and I was figuring my way out around the metro. And then I guess my face spelled out, "She's lost, give her directions." And someone actually approached me, and she's like, are you is there a station that you're looking to get to, or? And then they just helped me. So I was like, oh wow. Like I felt like if I did that in the Philippines, and not that I'm dissing my home country, it is safe on some occasions, but it's just something that's common to happen. Like if I were to look lost, there will be helpful people, but some of times it's the opposite, I'd say. Yeah. And I guess, yes, sorry, I interrupted.
No worries. So with that said, like you obviously, like, let's say, I'm just going to loop back to the whole journey and process, and, you've shared some of the different, expectations when you got here, some of the surprises. So going back a bit to when you did arrive here and, kind of adjusting, take us through the next step of, going to school here, and then actually navigating your way through the educational, system. Like it must have been a huge change from what you know, and then up until, finishing your program and then getting a job. Like, can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, so in terms of the education system, like I do have like people asking me about how's the load like studying that up studying in Canada in general. And I would tell them that I guess I don't know, I my engineering program would happen like at 7:30 a.m. all the way to 9 p.m. in the evening. And then my classes in at BCIT would only be from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. every day. Mm-hmm. And then, but like it would be 3 hour subject, 3 hours per subject every day. And in terms of the load, so in terms of timing, I felt like I was freer. Like I don't know, I felt more chill with like studying in Canada, I guess. But in terms of the workload, though, it was pretty hectic. Like every day there was something that we always had to deliver. Or maybe it was because in part it was because of my program, because it was graphic design, and we always had like in class group projects or group works, or like we always had to design something in class after learning a concept. And so in a way the workload was heavier as compared to my schooling in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. The good thing about BCIT was it's application based, and so I guess like learning stuck with me longer. Like I remember more of my graphic design concepts and applications than I do of my engineering back in the Philippines. And I took that for 5 years, right? Just because like BCIT really walks you through, like it's not just conceptual, it's like, or like it's not like theoretical, it's more like, okay, we're going to show you how exactly to how to make that form or how to create that design. So yeah, there were projects every week. I think we'd always have to present something every week. And this is per subject too. There, I think in Canada, they're more flexible or at negotiating. Like we were able to negotiate pushing back some of the projects, or like yeah, it was easy to talk to our teachers too, because they were very understanding, and they knew that it is heavy, because most of my classmates too would work like part-time or work full-time and then attend class, so there was a lot of understanding. Unlike the Philippines, I think it's more linear, where you have to study first and then you work. But in Canada, it's more like you have full-time work, well, you need to support yourself. And okay, that's understandable. We can work around your schedule to accommodate the most or everyone in class.
Did you work while you were going to school?
I did. So the first 3 months I spent just figuring out if I can. So I focused mostly on my studies. The first like term was more like hand drawn projects, and so I really had to dedicate my time to the course. But once I got a feel that once we were shifting to like digital design, and there was more I kind of gauged that if I felt more free tackling it, so that's when I started looking for part-time jobs. But I wanted my part-time job to still be kind of a no-brainer, not so that all that brain power would be focused on school still. So yeah, that's when I took up like a minimum wage job, and then at the end of my shift, I would just go to school. Yeah.
Well, so like what, I guess, what was your thought process in applying? Like this would technically be your first like job in Canada ever, even if it was part-time. Like, did you just research a lot? Did you just think of like what's closer to the proximity, or what was flexible to your school schedule? Like, what was your thought process in pursuing a part-time job while studying?
So first was the schedule. Of course, I had to take part of the schedule. The beauty about my program at BCIT was that it was at 6 to 9 p.m. So it was in the evening. So that gave me like the whole morning to afternoon to really to work part-time if ever. But like as an international student, you're only allowed to work 20 hours per week in Canada. So that's about like 5 hours or 4 hours per week. Right. So that way, like I mean, finding jobs were easy because they're mostly from morning to afternoon. The second thing I considered was proximity. So of course I wanted it to be near either where I lived or near where I study. And so the job that I got was near where I lived. It was like basically just one bus ride away, and it's like a 10-minute bus drive. And in terms of the process of applying to that part-time job, I did it really like old school. I didn't know back then when I applied, I didn't know that there was like Indeed or Glassdoor or LinkedIn. So I printed out my resume, like I made like 10 copies, and then we used to live near Main Street. So I walked that whole street, and then any store that I imagined myself working at, I would just drop in, talk to the manager, and then hand them my resume and tell them that I'm interested. If you're looking for like they usually have a sign too at the front of their store, like looking to hire for something. And so if I felt that I was qualified to do it, like I would go in and talk to the manager. And then yeah, of the 10 applications that I gave, like literally I just walked down the street and I'm like, okay, I like this shop because it's kind of like hipster and it kind of resonates with my personality. So I'm gonna go in and talk to the manager. So yeah, I most of them didn't get back to me. There was one, and then to me, like I mean, I wanted to, like, my main concern was um, getting into the workforce right away, just to assimilate myself in all aspects. Like, I already know what the curriculum is like studying in Canada. Now I want to know how the work situation is, even if it was a minimum wage job. So, like, the first one, I guess the first one that got back was the one I like. Okay, I'm like, let's do this. I want to start right away. It was I was a sales associate for a consignment store along Maine, and yeah, it was like they sell like secondhand items, and basically I had to be the person selling it to the customers, or like, entertaining the customers that come in to the shop every day. So that was a bit of a challenge because number one, I'm very introverted. Like, I'm very awkward, and like, my mom knows this. Every time someone calls us on our landline, I would panic. I'm like, Mom, can you get the phone? Like, someone's calling. I can't talk to the person. And yeah, like yeah, even like or like if a friend of mine is calling me on my cell phone, like, can you like text me? Because I'm getting really anxious. Like, can you just text or just message me on Instagram or something? And then all of a sudden I'm doing sales, like I have to be, I have to
public facing.
Yeah, the customer service. Like, hey, how's your day? How's it going? Have to like pick out like things about them that I can comment on, and like overall just be very accommodating. So
I'm just so blown away and just so impressed by you, because you've literally pushed beyond your own boundaries and your own comfort zone like many times over. I had to applaud. It's so incredible, because so many people will be like, oh my God, what is this? It's so scary.
No, and I do agree with them. There were times where I was like going to work and I'm like, I have to have this like happy voice, even if I'm groggy or like I feel sleepy or like I'm tired, because I know that I'll be studying right after. But then I have to kind of, every day was kind of like, well, if we get through this one thing, let's just get through this one thing first, and then we'll see how we feel. Yeah. And then until you hit all the tasks that need to be filled out that day, and then you realize like, oh, I finished, or it's done, or I made it, I survived. So yeah, that's how I felt throughout the process.
And like, just for me, I'm just so intrigued. Like, you've been here over 3 years now, right?
Yes, it's about 3 years.
So when did you feel like, okay, this is my place? Like, I'm settled. Like, this is like, when did you ever have an epiphany, a moment, an experience? Like, when did it kind of click into you that like, okay, this is my new home now?
Oh, I guess it clicked to me. Actually, I get very anxious about, I was anxious throughout the process, like, because I knew that I was still a temporary resident in Canada. So for me, every day felt like I still didn't belong. I tried, like, some days I would forget that and I would just kind of enjoy the process. But most days it's like, oh man, will this be the last time I see Science World? Will this be the last time that I walk at English Bay or try these donuts or whatever? So it was so hard for me to really enjoy or like talk myself through that I'm gonna be here.
Right. How long was the work permit? Like, how long was the study permit?
The study permit was 1 year. And then right after, I got like a post-grad work permit for another year. But then towards the like even during the time I had a study and work permit, I was still like, well, this is just the beginning. There wasn't any certainty yet, and so I only really felt that I belonged here after I received my invitation to apply for PR, which was like 5 months ago. So only 5 months ago did I feel like, oh man, now I can call this home. Like, okay, now I can kind of, breathe and and feel more secure that I don't have to move back, or like, I didn't have that. It wouldn't be like the last time. So only then it was like a really tough, like a mental struggle for me to convince myself that I should be like already telling myself that this is home, that this is my place. I needed some sort of certainty or proof. Yeah, it's always that. Like I feel like that was me when I was waiting for my study permit. Like, no, I can't say for sure that I'm actually going to Canada until I know that my visa has been approved. Even when I was waiting for my postgrad work permit, like, no, like, yes, I'm in Canada and yes, I'm working, but I want to make sure that I'm working, like, without like looking over my shoulders and thinking like, oh man, what if it gets rejected? I need like that document that tells me, yeah, you're good. You can work still. You're fine. And then all the way up to my PR. The PR was the hardest because that was I was waiting for 5 months for that invitation to apply. And in those 5 months were my darkest moments. Like I was still like, and then COVID happened around that time too. So that's like a double whammy. And I felt like really like not in my best, not in the best shape or like mentally. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Just like the whole journey that you've taken. And then now you've taken your experiences and you've shared them on YouTube.
I know, yes. Exactly. Yeah. Because like, I guess that's part of the reason. Like, okay, it's COVID. I can't go outside. Like, that was the whole point of me staying here as a visitor on a visitor visa. It's like, okay, now at least maybe in this time I can explore Canada. No, like COVID happened. I was like, I was so frustrated with the immigration process. Like some of the things I kind of learned as I was just going through the process. So I wasn't really like informed. Like I didn't do like the complete research on the immigration process. And once I found that out, like I was like, oh man, I don't want other people to go through what I did. Just the roller coaster of emotions. Maybe there's a way for them to like know beforehand on like what to expect. And like it's easy to read procedures online. Like they tell you the process, right? It's pretty straightforward. You submit documents, you fill out forms, you make sure they'll assess if you're qualified, and then you get to Canada. Like that's usually how it's explained online procedurally. But like the experience that I want to give to my YouTube viewers is like, okay, yes, that is a procedure, but what was the actual experience going through it? Like how long did I really have to wait, or how difficult was it to get all these documents, or or what was the process really like for me going through it, like mentally too. So I try to share most of that experience and all the things that I made, all the things that I did right, and also all the mistakes that I did, especially the mistakes that I did, to inform them that, hey, so that you don't have a setback or a drawback on your application. This is what happened to me. So I hope that you do not do that. So it's like a bigger sister telling their younger sister to not follow their footsteps if they're if they're doing something like experimental about this, about like self-discovery or something. So
yeah, And what you've done has been incredible. Like, of course, a lot of people look to you as a resource. And, you know, it's one thing to read something on paper, but it's one thing when somebody explains it to you. And you've done an incredible job kind of going through the process, explaining it, providing some insight that people wouldn't have thought about, right? So it's really incredible. But yeah, you know, we're obviously glad that you're here after all of that experience and now getting into PR, a permanent residence, right? It's just so like incredible how there's this new chapter of your life after going through all of that, you know, all of that.
All of that. It's a lot.
Yeah. And, you know, when it came to, you know, being here in Vancouver through the seasons changing and then through the years that you've spent here already, you know, what are some of your favorite places here in Vancouver? Like, what are your favorite spots to go to?
Oh man. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is like Falls Creek. It's by Science World. Yeah, I'm always there. Yeah, it's my favorite place. I take all my leisurely walks there, starting from Main Street Science World all the way to Granville Island, or the other way around, where it leads all the way up to English Bay. And like, yeah, it's just the views there are like prime examples of how Vancouver really nailed mixing modernity and nature. Like you're still surrounded by the tall skyscrapers or tall buildings, but you're also beside a body of water and these large parks where kids can play or dogs can run around. So it's just a relaxing day to it's just a relaxing thing to do to cap the day off, and I feel so much better after getting some fresh air by Falls Creek. And the other place that I would say I also enjoy being at is downtown or the Robson Street area. Like it's like Falls Creek gives me more of like the calm, but when I'm at Robson Street or I'm in the smack in the center of downtown, that's when I feel like, oh wow, it's just so satisfying to roam around like all these big or giant stores like Aritzia, Lululemon, Arc'teryx, Nordstrom, Indigo. All these like posh stores get me so excited. I mean, I just like looking at new stuff, and whenever I feel like I'm walking along Robson Street, it kind of inspires me to work hard and dream big. It's just because the lifestyle there is very high priced and luxurious. But yeah, most of the time I just like seeing the shopping setting, and I like seeing the lights at night there, especially by the Vancouver Art Gallery, like that wide space, and you can see all these tall buildings reflecting the night lights from Granville Street. And yeah, it's like an exciting place to be in. I've never been in that kind of setting. Like the Philippines has its own version of it, probably Bonifacio High Street or like Makati, but nothing comes close to that feeling that I get being at the downtown area. Like wow,
magic. Yeah,
it's kind of like being in New York, like how people imagine themselves to be at when they're in New York. I've never been to New York, but like the idea of it's like, oh, especially during Christmas and everything's kind of like amped up, you know, and alive. Like that's how I feel walking by Robson Street.
Wow. Personally, for me, whenever I get to a mountain, whether it's Cypress or Grouse, and then at Vancouver, I just or even going along Stanley Park, looking at the Vancouver skyline.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel like, wow, this place is gorgeous. Like, I get to live here. Like, this is amazing.
Like, and you think that you would get tired of looking at the same view every day, but you don't. Like, that's the beautiful thing about Vancouver. It's like I would never get tired of this view. Like, and it feels new every time too. Like when we visit these type of places.
Yeah, and there's still so many places to explore. Vancouver's so huge. It looks so different in different neighborhoods. So yeah, definitely. There's just always so much to be pleasantly surprised with, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, we've come to really at the end of the episode. We wanted to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experiences through the whole process, the whole journey of immigrating abroad. I have to commend you again for being so incredibly brave and determined and persistent and just being bold and going out of your comfort zone to make this dream come true for you. Now, to end it off, what for all the other aspiring millennials out there, I would like to say our generation, Filipino millennials, we tend to be more adventurous, more open-minded, more mas makapal yung mukha.
Yeah.
In a sense where we know that anything is possible.
Mhm.
What is your advice for somebody who's young, who's a Filipino millennial, maybe even based in Manila right now, or even in the Philippines? For those who are listening, what is your advice for them when it comes to pursuing this type of dream and this type of vision?
Well, okay. I guess my first advice would be, it's going to sound boring, but you have to calculate all your expenses prior to making an application to study or work in Canada. You have to be practical. And if you find yourself cutting corners to move here, it's probably not a good time to apply, because there will be unexpected costs when you arrive. And so you have to have that buffer to your budget for the unexpected. Um, for in terms of the application, I guess if you do decide to do an application yourself, make sure that it's honest, it's complete, and it's accurate, because misrepresentation has dire consequences that can ultimately affect your chances of coming to Canada. But it's on a more positive note, I guess to those that are like me, then I started this when I was 23 years old. I had no idea too what it would amount to down the line. But looking back at it, I did notice that there was consistency, there was discipline. I don't think that I would have made it this far if I didn't commit. So it's not like a travel thing where I'm gonna go to another country and I'm just gonna pack my bags and go. There's a lot of planning involved, and there are a lot of times where you have to go through the boring parts in order to enjoy things now. I really found myself being detached from my friends for a bit when I was going through this process, because that was part of consistency and being disciplined. And there were days where I really wanted to cry and complain about the whole process, but after multiple breakdowns, I still convinced myself to follow through. So yeah, I was crying while I was writing my letter of explanation, and filling out forms. I was jumpy, frustrated, impatient when I had to wait hours for a document. Basically, I was annoyed at everything when I was inconvenienced. It happens, but I did it anyway. The voice in your head must be louder than the external voices telling you that you can't do it. And there will be a lot of times where you would have to fight that voice, and you have to really tune into yours telling you that it is meant for you, that you can do it and you will. And I guess lastly, and more importantly, when it does get difficult, I know as cliche as this sounds, it's okay not to be okay. Like like uh, at 23, it's too much to ask for someone to go 100 all the time. Even at any age, it's hard to ask someone to go 100 all the time. And I knew that I can't always be strong. Otherwise, I'm also doing myself a disservice by repressing my bad feelings. So when these times happen, and they would often happen, I always value those times when I'm not in my best shape. And more importantly, I also value my time of rest. Heck, like even if it means doing mindless things. Like sometimes when I'm so stressed about getting documents or filling up forms, I kind of just like stop and then I just like watch a YouTube or go to Instagram and then just like, okay, like I want to forget the problem. I want to de-stress. And then to me, I find that very helpful because when I'm ready, I can jump back and focus on the true goal. And I guess that's my advice for um, um, those that are starting their application to come to Canada. It's okay. Like it's as long as you take the time for yourself, and then you jump back to become to being disciplined and consistent with your um, journey throughout this immigration process. You will find yourself just you will wake up one day and like, holy, I'm in a new country. Like, how did this happen? So I guess that's the advice that I could give.
Wonderful. And one day, some of you out there can also say, holy, it's so cold here now.
I know, yeah. Like, guys, bring a jacket here. Like, it's really cold. Like,
It's
like
cold early now. It's cold. I feel like it gets colder closer to December, but now that it's like mid-October, it got cold so fast. So.
Yeah, like holy, it was like 6 degrees the other day in October. So it's like that's something that like I was shocked because it was so sunny outside. And so I thought like, okay, I'm gonna wear like a light coat, like and yeah, and then I found myself bundling up wearing heat tech and like 3 other layers of clothing. Maybe because I was so used to the summer weather and then all of a sudden I had to bundle up. Yeah.
For sure. Now, lastly, we like to end every episode with something fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you, our fun trivia question is, if there is some sort of food here or snack or just any dish that you really enjoyed that you wish that you could bring back to the Philippines and show off to everybody, what would that be? Like, what food experience have you had here that you would bring to the Philippines, that you would want to share to the Philippines?
Oh man, I don't know why, but the first thing that came to mind was poutine.
Yes.
Like because I had that experience myself, and I'm like, why would they put gravy on French fries? And then I was like really resisting to try it. And then when I did, like I ended up loving it because like it doesn't look like as it's not as pleasing as it looks, like, or it's not as appetizing as it looks. But I was so surprised that it was so good. I mean, it's so simple too. Like there's but the idea of it was just, it baffled me. Like it was new to me. But when I tried it out, I loved it. So probably poutine. Other than, they already have Tim Hortons in the Philippines, so it's like it's not worth introducing anymore since it's there. So I guess the next would be the poutine. I actually haven't tried a lot of the food yet here, but if I do have a chance, I'd explore more. At least I have time now to explore more food places here.
Girl, I'm gonna take you. We're gonna eat
Yes, please. Like so far, it's been more of sushi here. Like I noticed that there are a lot of sushi places here. The one we went to was like Sushi Aboard.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think it was by Davy. I think or Robson. Yeah, it was so good because it's like a bullet train, but it's not really Canadian. So I guess the poutine would be the one I would introduce to my family.
And for listeners out there, I know there's some of you that are based in the US. Poutine is this magical dish that originated from Quebec. Basically, it's thick fries with cheese curds and gravy. It is just the most indulgent comfort food ever. Just hot gravy, cheese, and fries all together. Oh, so satisfying.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, it's so delicious. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Rachel, for joining us
for this episode.
We're so excited to have you. Please tell our listeners where they can find you, all your social media.
Yeah, so for those that are watching or listening, you could find me on my YouTube channel. Simply search rrdancel. That's RR and then dance with an L. And you can also look me up on my on my Instagram and TikTok. So yeah, I made a TikTok too. So about
The
all
TikTok
the
star now.
immigration tips and memes here in Canada. It's also RR Denzel. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. We cannot wait to, learn more about your experiences in social media. And yeah, thank you again for being a guest on Filipino Fridays podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'm going to stop.
Okay.
Yay. Okay, it's
Yay.
recording, but we're still together. I don't know if
Mhm.
you want to keep the stream going, but
Yeah.
thank you again for guesting on our podcast. I think people
It was
it.
I was so nervous, but I'm so glad that I don't know, like I felt so comfortable talking to you. It's just like very, I don't know, it felt like I was so relaxed, and thank you for being so friendly and so accommodating throughout this whole process. Like this is my first time ever doing this, and felt great because I was able to share that experience with you. So thank you so much.
I'm so glad I found you. I just have, I like to, for me personally, I like to keep myself like in the know with what's going on in the Philippines, like the entertainment news. And so when I found you on like Female Network, and then it was on Candy Mag, I was like, oh my God, this girl is in my city. I had to say hi. Come on.
Oh yeah, I was so thrilled too. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like
So
I was like,
awesome.
yeah, I was like, oh man, I started all of this just to share an experience. Nothing really to get anything out of it, just to share that information. And I'm like, oh wow, I feel like I can extend myself more to you and to others that noticed my journey. So I'm very grateful for that.
What I have to say is you're actually helping so many people. I mean, I know you did this just to share, like by establishing your YouTube channel and also with the TikTok kind of resources. Like you've done incredible work in helping others, and it's just amazing what you've done. And you're making a difference more than you know, really, when it comes to sharing all of your experiences, all of the mishaps.
I know.
So,
yeah. I especially want people to learn about the mishap. So, yeah.
awesome, great. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna let you go.
Okay.
I will let you know when the episode will drop on Spotify and all the streaming platforms. Yay! I'm gonna prep some promo ads that you can also share.
Yes.
So just watch out for that. Probably the next couple weeks or so. We're in a marathon of recording right now, so we actually have. We're releasing episodes every week, yours including. So we'll let you know when that's ready. I'll send you an email, and then we'll watch out for it to be released on Spotify. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you so much. I can't wait for that, and I'm so happy for you too for doing all these talks with Filipino millennials. Okay.
Yeah, I think they really relate to it. It resonates with a lot of them. It's what they're looking for, right? It's like people are curious, and sometimes you don't know where to look, and sometimes you're unsure who to ask. And so, yeah, you're a great resource, and I'm just here to ask the questions.
But yeah, you've been so kind and accommodating throughout this process. So it's so easy to talk to you, and it's so easy to divulge all this information. And it's great that like you're the mediator of because it's hard to really connect to people like directly, and you can be that bridge. So
yes,
yeah,
that's what we set out to do for sure. And like for me in general, I'm just naturally just curious. I love meeting people and getting to know people, and I I knew of your story, but when you were talking about it and sharing about it, I was like, wow, like I'm so impressed, like so incredibly like impressed by how brave you are, and how how like just trying to understand like the emotions behind that, and really pushing for yourself, like really being committed to yourself and making this happen for you. And I have to applaud you, commend you. Yeah,
thank you so much.
It's mind blowing. It's incredible, amazing job. I just have to say.
Thank you so much. I really don't know what else to say, but thank you so much for this. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I will get in touch with you shortly, pretty soon. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great night. I will definitely keep in touch, shortly when the episode drops and when the promo ads are ready. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Great.
much. Have a great day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.